I'm so excited. We've been working on this for over half a year.
All right, guys, so welcome back. So today, after the last video that I did with Chris, the Chia plot, and we were talking about the EverGreen miner and how, FOMO actually had a discussion on X where it was the rise and fall, and I was trying to figure out where the rise was, but I saw the fall and I saw the money being fed into EverGreen, and of course we have Mr. James, and he's AKA. Who are you on Discord? So everyone knows?
Luna.
Luna. All right. So that one threw me off. I'm not going to lie. When I first saw your name and I heard someone mention Luna, I'm like, Luna Terra? Like, it just threw me off. But anyway,
Yep.
You're here for a very specific reason. We're going to talk about it. It's Chia related, sort of, but more specifically, the EverGreen. Now, I have to ask, why was this brought onto the Discord and thrown into the public in this fashion? I just have to know why. Why did it go that route?
So all of this started in September of last year, and we've been trying to handle this privately since September. I've gone through lawyers. I've gone through Dylan's lawyers. We have tried to negotiate mediation. We had mediation scheduled for, actually it would have been sometime this month, but just a couple weeks ago, Dylan's team canceled that. So we did not have
when
mediation.
You say Dylan's team, you mean Dylan's attorneys canceled it?
I assume his attorneys made the decision. They informed my attorney, and I was informed there was no mediation. We have been trying to communicate with him and his team. In the past maybe 2 weeks, we actually managed to start some level of a conversation.
Okay.
They started going through some negotiations with us, which I cannot dive into any details on.
Understood.
But just to leave it at a surface level, my team was not satisfied with them. And so we told them.
Was this after the fact they didn't have this discussion and that's why you brought it onto Discord?
So we gave them our final offer of what we thought was an appropriate offer between both of us. Yeah, appropriate settlement for everybody.
Of course.
They never replied to us until I made that public message.
Just to give I could see that now. So just to give the public the general idea of what range are we talking about? Are we talking about $500? We're talking about $1,000? What are we talking about?
To my company. So this is not any of the other EverGreen debts. To my company, it totals about $250,000 in total debts.
$250,000. How long were you part of this project?
From the start beginning.
From the beginning, meaning
I technically was talking with Dylan before Grant was.
Got it. And those two were partners at one time.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the very first scripts that kind of came out in the EverGreen ecosystem was called Auto Chia Wallet. And it was a Python script that I wrote that was used for generating mass Chia wallets. So you needed a Chia wallet, you needed to get a plot NFT in it, and then you needed to have those for people for plotting. So one of the first things I did for Dylan was that script, and I did it for free. And it was just because we were talking through Twitter, and it was like, hey, do you think you could whip this up? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Were you guys friends before EverGreen?
No.
Or you guys kind of just connected?
Yeah, we had never heard of each other prior to EverGreen. We kind of connected on Reddit/Twitter, just talking about various, Chia related topics.
Okay.
And then, it was like April 2022 that I think he and I were officially working on EverGreen together.
When you guys got together and you're doing all this, were you aware of how much was being sold as far as the EverGreen miners and the profits and the loss and all that?
Yep.
Oh, you were. I mean, very transparent then. So you
yes.
knew.
So at the start, when Dylan first contacted me about creating those scripts back in like 2021, he had less than 10 sales. And then when I got started with him in April, I don't remember exactly where he was. I think he was slightly under 100, but it was still very early on.
Okay. So did anyone ever bulk buy this like this? $20,000 for EverGreen miners? Did anyone ever do that?
Yep.
Wow. I am shocked. I am honestly shocked. Was this before or after the Voss thing?
We had some pretty big spenders. Up to and including with Vosk. I think even after the Vosk thing came out, some of the, the most loyal EverGreen users did end up getting more kits. We have people who have, original kits, and then they had like our first V2 that came out, then they have the next compression level that came out. So
okay, wow. So there were definitely big ballers buying this EverGreen miners. I guess they were all coming pre-plot, obviously, and they were just coming in these individually packaged, not even like a bulk size NAS server style. It was just individually in each one of these 3D printed enclosures.
We did actually get a mold at some point. So they did stop getting 3D printed and they were injection molded.
Injection mold, right? That's when I think I started realizing the smoother plastic on them opposed to the lines on them. Now, was that all done in-house or like physically in your office where supposedly it all began, or no? Or that was outsourced?
Dylan worked with a company to create the mold, and the mold is done overseas.
Just say, I'm just curious. I was trying to analyze and understand how much would a simple, because, obviously bulk pricing is a lot different, but as an individual, right? I think it was like the smallest of the small, like a one was the Raspberry Pi. That's $299. Let's just say, for instance, how much would this cost to charge $299?
The starter kits were not a profit leader.
Not a profit. Okay.
It's one of those things where you only need one hub to handle multiple drives.
Okay.
And so if you buy one hub and one drive, potentially 50% of what you've sunk in is on the drive. But if you buy one hub and 10 drives, well, now the hub is a much smaller percentage of the cost, and the drives are what earn you money. It was always a better deal to get the 4-packs and the 10-packs, and that was very apparent in the pricing and the earnings, and they were actually the more popular pack for that reason.
Okay. They sold a whole bunch. They got people to sponsor it. They were basically giving it out for free to all these content creators on YouTube. I legitimately got one as well. I wasn't too crazy about it because it couldn't make any sense to me why someone would spend the extra amount of dollars opposed to just doing the plotting and the whole process on their own. But of course, there's a lot of people who just want plug and play. So totally understandable. Now, the juicier part, I want to understand. Supposedly there was a rise. You guys are building this out. You're putting everything together. You're bulk selling it all out. Where did it stop with you not receiving payment? Like when did that begin? Right? Because I think there was a long duration of time that you said that was missing payment. Right? Where did you draw the line to say, was it after 8 months like there was 8 months of accumulative rent and work that was being done? Like, did you not say, hey, I didn't get anything this month, second month, like, why am I still going on? Why did you do it?
So it kind of started, we'll say, when Grant left the company.
Okay. Now, may I ask why he left the company?
I can't say that.
Okay, that's fine.
So when Grant was no longer a part of EverGreen, Dylan stepped up as the CEO and I stepped up as the CTO. And this was in December of 2023. First late payment was for the invoice that I sent for January of 2024. And so that was the first late payment. And it was a discussion that we had already had kind of the month before. So I knew this first one was going to be late. And it was actually the reason that I took such a substantial pay cut.
Did you not see the writing on the wall? Was sales going down or was expenses going up? Was he buying things he shouldn't have bought without consulting with you as a CTO? What was it?
At this point, no. We had a couple unexpected expenses that came up and some unexpected downtime during the transition process. So
was sales still happening? Like sales, the profit was still coming in?
This was that period of time where we were getting behind. So our original estimate on devices was 4 to 6 weeks, and that's when we were trying to get them out to customers. I think at this point we were at about 2.5 months. We were really behind on the units, and that was creating some negative talk in the Discord and other public areas. And yes, sales did slow down.
Okay, so some individuals want to ask this, right?
Yeah.
Where does these GPUs come from, and was they're all in stock in the EverGreen facility, or was that something like, hey, you're gonna order this, we'll scramble to try to get it, and then resell it back out? Is that how that worked? How
the GPUs are not owned by EverGreen.
Not owned by EverGreen. Okay.
I cannot disclose who they are owned by.
Not a problem.
They are hosted.
I have a general idea where that comes from. I'm not going to have to say anything. That just show the colors, and I think I know where it comes from. I think everyone else is going to.
And at this point, it's actually public information, so I can talk about this hosting agreement because it's part of the asset sale of EverGreen.
Right.
So those GPU contracts that are for sale as part of the asset sale of EverGreen, what would happen is a client would purchase one of these GPU rigs.
Yeah.
That GPU rig would then go under a hosting contract at the EverGreen data center.
Right.
50% of that goes to the owner of the rig, 25% of that goes to the facility manager, and 25% of that goes to EverGreen.
Wow, those are I mean, the number sounds great as far as, but to break it down to reality seems a lot more difficult. I'm pretty sure of that. Like, how do you break that down so like to the T of 25%, 50%? Like it's a harder it's easier said than done, obviously, right?
It actually wasn't that hard to track.
Oh, okay.
The partners that we were using for the reselling of the compute gave us pretty decent logs and audits as to who paid what and what machine it went to, and therefore who should get what percent of what earnings.
So based off the FOMO interview that you did, right? Did you guys really feel like you were the Apple of crypto?
Dylan loved to say that. I'm not
Did you feel it?
I'm not a big startup guy, so for me, I'm in it for the tech.
Yeah.
I've kind of always been in it for the technology. The kind of the business and how the startup worked and what we wanted to compare ourselves and what the work culture should have been like was never really my side of it.
I mean, I guess you could tell by this color scheme, it obviously depicts the 90s Apple. Would probably said, if I didn't know anything about Apple, I would say this is creative. But at the same time, because I know the history of Apple, I have to say this is just a bootleg, right? At this point.
So are you looking at the 8 GPU rig machine right now?
I'm looking at the EverGreen 2, which is the your personal supercomputer.
Yeah,
and
it
has like the blue and the green and the purple, like all the enclosures, and they look sort of look like Macs, but GPU clusters.
Do.
Yeah.
And that was totally intentional, definitely by design.
Okay.
But those things will never work in that form factor how he has them. Not enough.
It's all
heat
plastic. Yeah. There's no way to ventilate any of this. So anyone who's watching the video, and when you rewatch this, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about what happened after the fact, right? So the late payment came in.
Late payment came in.
You didn't get paid, right, for a month or so. Then what happened? Did the tension start building, and you guys started getting into arguments, or how that worked out?
For the first couple months, no. I mean, it was pretty understanding. We had been business partners at this point for almost 2 years.
Right.
And just to take a couple steps back, Dylan likes to say he was living out of his van. His van was parked in my driveway. he slept in that van, but he spent most of his time in my house.
I have to ask, everyone was speculating, a van, but I know people who own camper vans that are like $500,000. So was it like a minivan? Was it a rundown camper van?
Yeah, very rundown, paint peeling. No, he definitely had the startup culture life with his van for sure.
Okay, all right.
And prior to working with us, he definitely was working out of that van. The 3D printer was in there. I mean, it was wild.
Wow. So the electricity was basically coming from your property.
Yes. And actually, one of the debts that he still owes us is about $20,000 in electricity.
Was all the plotting done at your facility too, at your property?
Up until September 13th.
Okay. So what happened after September 13th? Who did he decide to...
That was when so that was our last day being involved with each other.
Okay. Was that like full-blown arguments and yelling and screaming, or did you guys shake hand and be like, okay, I'll see you in court?
It was a very quick video call where we hopped on, and I said, Dylan, if you would like me and my team to continue working for you, you need to get caught up on payments. You are in breach of contract. I've been informing you that you are in breach of contract for many months now.
Right.
Please get caught up on the payments.
Let me ask you something about this contract. And we were
Yeah.
speculating on the last video that I had with Chris. Was that a formal go to the attorney, all drafted up, all the fine details contract? Or
Yep.
did you guys really use ChatGPT and say, give us a contract between two guys for a startup?
No, that first contract was approved by a legal team.
Got it. Okay, so at this moment in time, you had this quick video call. Where was he? Because I thought he was living out of this van. Did he have other jobs?
In about February, March-ish, I don't remember the exact date, he moved into switching between San Francisco and Wyoming.
Okay.
So Wyoming is where the data center was that the GPUs are at. And so he spent a lot of time there building units and, prepping the facility and et cetera, et cetera. And then he also spent a lot of time in San Francisco, I believe, because at that point he was still cooking up Berkeley Compute with JM and Paul.
So EverGreen had a shit ton of Raspberry Pis, right?
Oh, yeah.
How the hell did you guys get so many during that time when everyone was snatching them up? Like it was, I think the 4 just came out, and if you went to Micro Center, it was never in stock.
We were the problem. We were buying up literally all of them.
How though? Because the inventory wasn't even that high when they got into stock. Like, where would you guys buying it?
We were behind. So I don't think we ever got them directly from Raspberry Pi, but we were getting them from just about every vendor we could find.
Every retailer.
Locally. Yeah, like we were scooping them up.
Ugh, you guys, man, I hate it.
Part of the reason that we started exploring other boards is
Raspberry Pi was a high cost for something.
So we actually ended up switching. So the whole VOSC unit and like a lot of the versions behind that, they were actually running off of ROCs from Radza.
You didn't know at that time if it was going to be possible to farm any of these plots that you guys had. You just knew that Raspberry Pi worked.
We knew that the Radza would work as well. The chipset was actually a more powerful ARM chip than the one that was on the Pis.
Right. So how many people were in staff? So you had Dylan, the other gentleman left already. So how many people were actually working for EverGreen at this time?
So there's a couple of virtual/remote workers that I was never aware of.
Oh, wow.
That were marketing and other things. So I don't know the exact count, but that were ever at my facility.
Most CTOs, and at this point in time, you were already the CTO, right? He didn't have to consult with you in regarding, expenses and finances, right? Because CTOs normally just deal with the technology stuff.
Correct. He didn't have to. We did talk pretty regularly about that stuff, but I wouldn't say, there was an obligation, but we did.
Okay. So he wouldn't come to you and say, oh, I'm going to, hire another assistant or buy more stuff and do more marketing. You wouldn't even been aware of that. Like,
he would tell me if he was going to do it. So like I knew when we were moving from like one marketing company to another, or when something else like that was happening. I just wouldn't know too much of like the details behind it.
But being the CTO, did you ever say, hey, let me see what those expenses are, the bills or anything? Did he ever throw that in front of you and say, oh, this is how much it's going to cost us this month?
In 2024, when the bills started to fall behind, I started to ask for a lot more of that. Show me the money. And that actually started to become the number one source of our contention, was that was never provided.
Okay. Was he the only one managing that site, or did he have someone else do that, like a bookkeeper or?
I think he had an assistant, but I don't know how much they did versus what he did.
Leading into that, you had the first month, second month, no payment. So that was January of 2024, right?
Yes. So he fell behind in January. About halfway into February, he paid me January's. So at that point, he was only like 2 weeks late. It wasn't that bad. Totally was fine. But then the following month, it was 3 weeks late. And then the following month, it came on the date as the same invoice got sent out. So at that point, he was a whole month behind until we hit September. And at the time in September when I confronted him, it was close to 3 months.
Close to 3 months. Okay. Now, did anyone ever speak to you about, like, did you consult with anyone else about this situation before you went to an attorney? Or did you just say, I'm done, I'm fed up?
So this is actually a wrong point that they said publicly.
Which is what?
I never contacted an attorney first.
Oh.
They contacted an attorney first.
You mean the Dylan? contacted an attorney. Why? Well, why was that? So they wouldn't
Because
have to pay you?
yeah, so we had that conversation on the phone, and
Mm-hmm.
after that conversation on the phone, I sent Dylan an email, something along the terms of, it's very unfortunate that our relationship has ended this way. I never expected you to terminate my team for asking us to pay us what is owed.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. We will get you a list of the debts in the next couple of days, and we expect prompt payment. He responded with, okay, give me a list of all of those debts, blah, blah, blah. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we gave that to him, he responded with a lawyer who disagreed with what our.
For EverGreen, when you guys first started, was there any type of grants coming in from initially from Chia Network and themselves?
The only grant that I am aware of was the Chia cultivation grant we got for making the light farmer.
Was that where the whole thing started off because you had funding to purchase, inventory and build these things out?
No, the cultivation grant that we got from Chia was well into EverGreen's existence, and it was at the time when we were exploring alternatives to Flex Farmer.
Got it.
We kind of knew that Flex Farmer was kind of our biggest exposure point.
Okay.
If Flex Farmer ever went down, which it did, EverGreen would have kind of been SOL.
Okay,
So
that's when Fast Farmer came out, right?
Well, so it was Cult Light Farmer first, because we at first were trying to do one that was sponsored by this cultivation grant from Chia. We developed that farmer, but Chia was very restrictive on how we were able to develop that. We had to follow it very much kind of like by a guideline that we had established when we applied for the grant.
Right.
And at that point, the Chia ecosystem had changed a little bit, like compression was coming out a lot more.
Right.
And there was just things that like we wanted to take the farmer in a different direction.
Now, how did they pay you? Was it like actual monetary like money or was it XCH and go figure out how to exchange it?
It is my understanding is it was cash.
Oh, okay. All right. And how much were we talking about? Do you know?
It was 20,000.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh boy. Oh man. Okay. All right. I'm thinking like along the lines of $1 million or something like that. Okay. All right. 20,000. So he was paying you. He had good intentions of paying you.
Oh yeah. And he paid me on time and correctly for, right. Well, let me rephrase. When Grant was CEO, I was paid on time and correctly during my entire employment at EverGreen.
Got it.
When Dylan was CEO, I was paid for 1 month on time.
Oh boy. Is EverGreen officially like out of business? It's bankrupt, right? It filed for bankruptcy at this point?
They filed for insolvency, which is, it's a little bit different. It's like private party bankruptcy essentially. And he can potentially go through a restructure where EverGreen itself doesn't actually disappear as a company.
Right. I see him pushing out more things or trying to revive the customer base after this exposure. I see that.
Yes. Yeah, he completely ignored Discord for months and didn't respond to anybody. And then the second he gets called out publicly, he's there every day now. So
I mean that has some good intentions, right? He's trying to not lose face.
Yeah, he's trying to save face.
Yeah, try to save face, right? Do you feel like without your help in any of this, like where would EverGreen be? Because you were the backbone, right? You developed everything that it sits on right now.
Yep. So, the operating system was my development, the plotting infrastructure and software, the QA systems, the farmer.
So this will only last until possibly the next plots come out and Chia starts ignoring the previous plot versions, right?
So I don't know how much Marvin is still working for EverGreen. I think he's focused full time at Berkeley Compute right now, or sorry, Silicon.net.
Okay. Why did they name change? I learned about that too. I have
no idea. Absolutely no idea. But Marvin, absolutely gifted developer. Great with Rust. He's great with pretty much everything we've thrown at him. I think his wallet is Ozone. He got brought into EverGreen to help us with our app after Grant was no longer involved, because Grant's team was the one who was handling the app at the time.
Got it.
And so Marvin got brought in, and yeah, he's a rock star. He is one of the few people I think that could easily pick up Fast Farmer or one of those Rust interfaces, and actually continue to develop on it.
So going now, obviously we spoke about Dylan. He came back after the whole, exposure publicly and trying to, keep the customers happy with the EverGreen stuff. You are totally out of this since since the attorney came and I guess gave you papers to say we're not going to pay you, and you've been out of the picture for how long now?
Totally. So the amazing part is I've actually not received anything like an official termination letter or anything from EverGreen. I got an email from him that said, if you're not going to work, consider everything canceled. But that was the most official firing that anyone on my team got, because there was actually other.
No,
that was
Dylan.
just from Dylan.
Oh,
that was just from Dylan.
Dylan.
So that's all I actually ever received.
Right.
And two members of my team never even were informed by Dylan that they were fired. They found out through me.
So when did you go get an attorney?
I got an attorney end of November, early December, after they were
just
refusing
like
to.
A couple months ago.
And at that point, I had to, because they were accusing me and my team of a crime. They were trying to claim that we locked them out of the systems on the way out, which I am going to very publicly state right now, we did not. We did not touch his systems. We did not do anything malicious. At the termination of our contracts, we removed all access from our ability to touch Dylan's systems.
And please tell everyone, what's the reason for any type of backdoors to these EverGreen models?
It's a support tool. So whenever you see them in EverGreen's, support channel, say, "Oh, let me log in and look into it," or "Let me check."
Okay.
They're very likely logging into your device.
That is crazy. So now Dylan is officially with this other company. What was it again? It changed
Silicon.net, Berkeley Compute.
Yeah, Berkeley Compute. So, and they got grants and funding from Chia as well. So he's sitting on more money over there, a lot more money, apparently.
A lot more money
than $20,000.
Yeah.
So you definitely have the funds to reimburse you for all the things that you've done, but again, those are separate entities, right?
They are separate entities.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of weird mixing between the entities, which has been kind of odd. Because like I said, a couple of EverGreen employees moved from EverGreen to Berkeley Compute.
Interesting. Okay.
At the same time, there is all of these GPU contracts and this whole GPU management software. In fact, I'll touch on this briefly, but one of the big reasons why I allowed Dylan to kind of accumulate this much debt is he had been promising me a job at Berkeley Compute, and he had been promising that we were going to sell this GPU software that we had been working on to Berkeley Compute, and that sale of the software would help us recover all of the debts that we had accumulated.
So that's what I wanted to ask you. Was this talk of you joining Berkeley after he was delayed on payment or before he was delayed on payment?
It kind of started at about the same time.
Around the same time. So
yeah.
So spaced out, he paid you late, and he said, well, I have this great idea. We're going to be joining Berkeley Compute. I want you to come with us, and we're going to make all this money, and I'll back pay you everything that I owe you. That's basically
so at that time,
what happened.
At that time, I actually also was in communication with JM.
Okay.
JM was still pretty involved with communicating with EverGreen. He advised us on a number of different things. So, we had a bit of a relationship with him. So it wasn't just Dylan as a part of these conversations.
Why didn't you go? How did that stop?
So Berkeley Compute announced their launch and their hiring of everybody about 2 weeks after I asked Dylan to pay me. So in other words, if I had probably just bit my tongue and let him continue to accrue debt with us, I probably would be at Berkeley Compute.
Just because of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He rescinded the offer because I asked him to pay me for work I had done at EverGreen.
Got it. Wow. That was a tricky one. I mean, if you bit your tongue, you'd probably be sitting there now and still be waiting for more payment. Because
I might be.
Right. Or, I mean, they would have, what was it, $5 million that they got into Berkeley Compute?
They got $5 million in, and I cannot talk about private amounts of money that they were talking about for this GPU software, but the GPU software that I was writing during this time that EverGreen was in breach of contract was the software that they are intending to sell to Berkeley Compute. And I believe because of this whole tie-up of ownership and IP and et cetera, now they are not going to sell it to Berkeley Compute. But if it all goes through in an asset sale, well, who knows? Berkeley Compute could just buy it from the asset sale, super cheap, green selling everything, and so that it's a little scummy, you know. He
Yeah.
can
So
shut down
let's
one company and sell
right,
stuff
exactly.
potentially to the other or his friends, or yeah.
So let's just close this up right now. What is happening now at this moment? What's your attorney? What's their attorney? Where do we leave off right now? What's going to happen?
Right now, they are trying to push forward with an asset sale, and myself and others are attempting to block the asset sale until we resolve the IP rights of our software.
God, wow, that's a
And
lot bigger.
so, if that ends up getting blocked, which I assume it will, but we'll have to see what happens.
Okay. So
It
this
will
could
delay
drag on for
the
some time. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it could go on for a little bit of more time. I would love to, get you on, as time goes on, obviously, maybe next month, another month from now, and see where you're at, and voice any type of new information, new revelation that you want to share with the rest of the team to let us know exactly what kind of people are in this Chia ecosystem that we're supposedly a fun group and a very friendly group, but apparently in the back behind the scenes is not always the case.
Yeah, there are a couple bad apples, I think, but I will say I have nothing bad to say about Paul, and I have had nothing but amazing good experiences with JM. He's a
Okay.
wonderful person.
Right.
So
Got it.
of the apples out there, there's only one I'm really thinking of right now.
I hear you. I hear you.
And I definitely would love to come back on in about a month. I think by then I will have the first version of my replacement OS released.
Awesome.
I just
Okay.
pushed the first commit out to GitHub yesterday, so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
making real good progress on that.
So let me ask you one last thing before we go. Are
Yeah.
you only focused on Chia or are you on other projects?
My primary focus is Chia, both in the projects that I work in on my free time and the work that I do for pay.
Got it. So why work for pay from who now? For
I'm a
yourself or you're
I can't speak
freelance?
to my contracts, but I have a couple independent contracts
Chia specific
that are in the Chia ecosystem.
in the Chia ecosystem. Let me
Yeah.
ask you this. What do you feel? Why do you believe in Chia so much? Why only Chia projects?
So I've been involved prior to testnet. One of
Okay.
the first things my company Galactex worked on was a Java version of Chia's source code and a Java version of Chia's pool. And we got
Got it.
both of
Okay.
those to a launchable state before EverGreen found us. And then we ended up spending all of our time in at EverGreen.
Okay.
But it is by far my opinion that as blockchain technology goes, Chia is leagues ahead of everybody else.
Okay.
I
Fair
don't
enough.
necessarily believe in some of the things that CNI says and the way that certain employees they have act sometimes, but
Right. Right.
the mission, the goal, and the tech, it's where it's at.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here and explaining your side and everything to the audience. And hopefully we'll definitely stay in touch. All right.
Definitely.
All right.